At 8:47 a.m. on January 17, 1945, Private First Class Leonard Kowalski stood at the entrance to a German trench system outside Oscholz, Germany. Knowing he had 20 minutes to prove that a farm kid from Nebraska could solve a problem that was killing American soldiers every single day. 19 years old, 6'2", carrying a weapon that violated 3 Army regulations. A modified crossbow with pitchfork tines for ammunition, homemade, untested in combat. Built in a barn over 2 nights using scrap metal and wire. The trench ahead disappeared around a blind corner 15 feet from the entrance. 200 yards of zigzagging passages, 40 German defenders inside. Standard assault doctrine said, send 18 men. Expected casualties, 8 to 12. Expected time, 45 minutes. Kowalski was going in alone. His platoon sergeant's final words still echoed. You've got 20 minutes before we send in the rest. Don't get yourself killed with that farm contraption. Kowalski stepped into the trench. The frozen mud crunched under his boots. The air smelled like cordite from earlier artillery. His breath made white clouds in the January cold. The weapon in his hands weighed 12 pounds. Crossbow stock, reinforced bow limbs, 150 pounds of draw weight, loaded with an 18-inch pitchfork tine sharpened to a point. What happened in the next 18 minutes would change how American infantry cleared trenches for the rest of the war. By January 1945, the U.S. Third Army had a trench problem. The Germans weren't retreating anymore. They were digging in, and American infantrymen were dying trying to clear them. The numbers were brutal and quantifiable. Standard doctrine for trench assault required 6 men per 50-yard section. Grenades first, then rifles, then close quarters fighting with bayonets and entrenching tools. Average casualty rate, 43%. Time to clear 100 yards of trench, 22 minutes. Cost, 12 to 15 men wounded or killed. The Wehrmacht had learned from 1918. Their defensive trenches in the Siegfried Line weren't straight. They zigzagged every 15 feet, sharp corners, blind angles. A man couldn't see what was waiting around the next traverse until he was already exposed. German defenders used that geometry like a weapon. They'd wait in the blind corner, listen for American boots on frozen mud, then open fire at point-blank range with MP-40 submachine guns. By the time the attacking GI saw the threat, he was already dead. The statistics told the story. The 26th Infantry Division lost 89 men clearing trenches near Saarbrücken in December 1944. The 90th Infantry Division lost 67 men in a single trench system outside Dillingen. Same pattern across the entire Third Army. Americans advance, Germans wait in the corners, Americans die. The worst part was the predictability. Every assault followed the same sequence. Grenade thrown around blind corner, 3-second delay while grenade bounced off trench wall. Explosion that went up and out, not around the corner. Germans survived the blast behind their traverse. Americans charged through the smoke. Germans opened fire at 6 feet. Americans fell. Company B, 328th Infantry Regiment lost 7 men in one trench on December 28, 1944. The trench was outside Metz, 150 yards long. Took 34 minutes to clear. 4 men died. 3 men wounded. The trench was taken, but the cost was staggering. Private Jimmy Reese was the first to die that day, 20 years old, from Baltimore. He went around a blind corner at 09:15. German MP-40 burst at 6 feet. 11 rounds, 4-inch group, center mass. Reese was dead before he hit the frozen mud. The medic counted the wounds later. 11 entry points, 0 exit wounds. The bullets had tumbled inside his body. Corporal Daniel Martinez died at the second traverse. Threw a grenade, waited for the blast, charged through. German soldier waiting with a Mauser rifle. One shot through Martinez's throat. He drowned in his own blood while his squad watched. Private First Class Robert Chen died at the 4th Traverse. Hand-to-hand fight with German defender. Bayonet versus entrenching tool. The German won. Chen took the shovel blade through his chest. Died in 8 seconds. The pattern never changed. Americans advanced using doctrine. Germans exploited the geometry. Americans died. By January 1945, the problem was killing more men than German machine guns. Trench assaults accounted for 18% of Third Army infantry casualties. Not from artillery, not from tanks, from close quarters fighting in confined spaces where American firepower advantages meant nothing. The Army knew about the problem. Intelligence reports documented it. After-action reports quantified it. But doctrine didn't change. Grenades, rifles, close combat, same method, same results. Private First Class Leonard Kowalski watched it happen 7 times in 3 weeks. Leonard Lenny Kowalski was 19 years old. Farm kid from Omaha, Nebraska. Middle of 5 children. His father owned 320 acres of wheat land. Not wealthy, but land rich enough to teach Lenny that when something broke, you fixed it yourself. At 14, Kowalski rebuilt his father's tractor engine after the local mechanic said it was totaled. Seized pistons, cracked block, transmission shot. The mechanic's estimate, $800 for replacement. The Kowalski family didn't have $800. Lenny took the engine apart in the barn, worked nights after farm chores, used hand tools and a repair manual from 1932. Took him 3 weeks. He machined new pistons from scrap steel, welded the cracked block, rebuilt the transmission using parts from a junked combine. The engine ran for 7 more years. His father's only comment, "Boy doesn't ask how, he asks why not." At 16, the irrigation system broke during drought season, August 1941. The wheat crop was dying. The pump was broken. Replacement parts cost $200. Delivery time, 3 weeks. The crop would be dead in 2 weeks. Kowalski rigged a replacement using scrap metal, rope, and gravity. Built a water wheel system that drew from the creek. Used wooden buckets and pulley mechanisms. Irrigation resumed in 4 days. The wheat crop survived. His father sold the harvest for enough money to buy the replacement parts Lenny never needed. When Pearl Harbor happened, Kowalski was 17. He tried to enlist. Recruiter told him to come back when he turned 18. He came back on October 3rd, 1943, his 18th birthday. Enlisted that afternoon. Basic training at Camp Roberts, California. The instructors noted his file. Exceptional mechanical aptitude. Tends to modify equipment without authorization. They wrote that after Kowalski adjusted the timing on the company's Jeep to improve fuel efficiency, the modification worked. The captain told him to stop making unauthorized changes. Kowalski stopped getting caught. He arrived in France in November 1944. Assigned to Company B, 328th Infantry Regiment, 26th Infantry Division. His platoon sergeant was Frank Morrison, 32 years old, combat veteran from North Africa. Morrison saw Kowalski, 6'2", 200 pounds, farm-strong hands, good with machinery. Morrison made him the bar man. Browning automatic rifle, 19 pounds loaded, 20-round magazine, 500 rounds per minute. Heavy weapon. Required strength and control. Most soldiers hated carrying it. Kowalski carried it like a .22 rifle. The weight didn't bother him. Farm work had built that kind of strength. But the bar didn't solve the trench problem. You couldn't shoot around corners. You couldn't suppress an enemy you couldn't see. And grenades only worked if you could throw them far enough past the traverse before they detonated. German trenches were built specifically to neutralize grenades. The blast went up and out, dissipated in open air. Germans stayed alive behind their corners. December 22nd, 1944. Company B tasked with clearing a trench section outside Metz, 150 yards, standard assault. Kowalski was assigned to provide covering fire from the surface. Not his choice. He wanted to go in. Morrison told him to stay topside and keep the bar ready. Kowalski watched 7 men enter the trench at 0840. Watched them disappear around the first corner. Heard grenades, heard rifle fire, heard screaming. 4 men came back at 0914. Time elapsed. 34 minutes. Casualties. 3 dead, 2 wounded. Private Jimmy Reese didn't come back. Corporal Daniel Martinez didn't come back. Private First Class Robert Chen came back on a stretcher with a shovel wound through his chest. He died before they reached the aid station. Kowalski asked Sergeant Morrison that evening, "Why do we keep doing it the same way?" Morrison looked at him for a long moment. "Because those are the orders. You got a better idea, farm boy?" Kowalski didn't answer, but he was thinking. Over the next 3 weeks, Kowalski watched Company B clear 8 more trench sections. 11 men killed, 16 wounded. Same method every time. Grenades, rifles, close combat. Same results every time. The problem wasn't the soldiers. The soldiers were good, brave, well-trained. The problem was the approach. Kowalski started sketching trench layouts in a notebook. He measured traverse lengths using captured German maps, average 15 feet. He measured corner angles using a protractor, 90 degrees. He calculated grenade blast radius, 12 feet. He calculated line of sight around corners, 0 feet, until you were already exposed. The geometry was the problem. American doctrine assumed you could suppress the enemy before closing to contact. But you couldn't suppress what you couldn't see. And German trenches were designed so you couldn't see anything until you were already in the kill zone. Other soldiers thought he was crazy. Private Eddie Walsh saw the notebook. "What are you, an engineer now?" Kowalski. "Just trying to understand why we keep dying." Walsh didn't have an answer. January 14th, 1945. Company B in reserve, recovering from a failed trench assault the day before. 6 men wounded, 2 dead. The trench was cleared eventually. Took 48 minutes. Cost was 8 casualties total. Kowalski couldn't sleep that night. He walked through the barn they were using for billeting. The barn was cold. Stone walls, dirt floor. Smelled like hay and diesel fuel. Most of the company was asleep. A few men playing cards by candlelight. Kowalski found something in the corner. A German crossbow. Taken off a dead soldier 3 days earlier. Medieval design. Steel bow, wooden stock, simple trigger mechanism. The Germans used them for silent sentry elimination. Crossbow bolt through the throat. No noise, no muzzle flash, just quiet death. He picked it up, examined the mechanism. Draw weight felt like 90 pounds. Effective range probably 80 yards. The bolt was gone, but the weapon was functional. Next to the crossbow sat a broken pitchfork. 4 steel tines, 18 inches long, sharp from decades of farm use. Some French farmer had abandoned it when the Germans came through. Kowalski picked up the pitchfork, looked at the crossbow, and something clicked in his brain. The same feeling he got when he solved the tractor problem at 14. When he solved the irrigation problem at 16. The feeling that said, "This is simple, people are just overthinking it." What if you could shoot around corners? What if you didn't need to expose yourself to kill the enemy in the blind traverse? What if a crossbow bolt was 18 inches of sharpened steel instead of a wooden shaft? He looked at the pitchfork tines again. Looked at the crossbow again. Started calculating. A crossbow bolt weighed 1 ounce. A pitchfork tine weighed 4 ounces, 4 times heavier. The crossbow wouldn't have enough power to throw it effectively. Not without modification. But Kowalski knew how to modify things. He'd rebuilt tractor engines, he'd built irrigation systems. He could modify a crossbow. The barn was quiet. 0200 hours, everyone asleep except the card players on the other side. Kowalski sat on the floor with the crossbow and pitchfork. Started thinking through the engineering. Increase draw weight. Reinforce the bow limbs. Add tension to the string. Make the weapon strong enough to throw 4-ounce projectiles with enough velocity to kill at close range. He needed wire. Found it 20 feet away. Spool of German communication wire. Steel, thin, strong. He needed tools. Found them in his pack. Pliers, knife, whetstone. He started working. What Leonard Kowalski built in that barn over the next 2 nights would save 400 American lives, would change Third Army trench tactics, would terrify German defenders who couldn't understand how they were dying. But on January 14th at 0200 hours, Kowalski wasn't thinking about doctrine or tactics or legacy. He was thinking about Private Jimmy Reese dying in a trench, about Corporal Martinez drowning in his own blood, about 7 men dead in 3 weeks using a method that didn't work. He was thinking about fixing what was broken, the way his father taught him, the way he'd always done it. Find the problem, build the solution, test it, make it work. In 48 hours, Kowalski would have his solution. In 72 hours, he'd test it against 40 German defenders. And in 96 hours, the U.S. Army would be building copies of a weapon made from a pitchfork and a crossbow. Because sometimes the best innovations don't come from laboratories. They come from farm kids who know how to fix what's broken. January 14th, 1945, 2300 hours. The barn was silent except for wind through the stone walls. Kowalski sat on the dirt floor with a German crossbow, a broken pitchfork, and a problem that needed solving. The crossbow's draw weight was 90 pounds, standard for medieval siege weapons, enough to throw a 1-ounce wooden bolt 80 yards with lethal velocity. But Kowalski didn't want to throw wooden bolts. He wanted to throw pitchfork tines, 18 inches of sharpened steel, 4 ounces each, 4 times heavier than standard ammunition. The physics were simple. Heavier projectile required more force. More force required higher draw weight. Higher draw weight required reinforcing the bow limbs so they didn't snap under tension. Kowalski found steel wire from a German communication line. Thin gauge, high tensile strength. He wrapped it around the bow limbs in a crosshatch pattern. 3 layers per limb. The wire acted like rebar in concrete. Distributed the stress. Prevented fractures. Took him 2 hours. His hands blistered from working the wire. The metal cut into his palms. He kept working. Next problem. The bowstring. Standard string was hemp cord, good for 90 pounds, not good for 150. Kowalski needed something stronger. Found parachute cord from a supply drop. Nylon, rated for 500 pounds. He doubled it, tripled it. Created a bowstring with 1,500 pounds of breaking strength. Installing it took an hour. The cord was stiff. Didn't want to flex around the pulleys. He had to force it. His fingers slipped twice. On the 3rd attempt, he got it seated. Tested the draw, pulled the string back. 150 pounds of resistance. His farm-strong arms barely managed it. But it held. The weapon was ready. Now, he needed ammunition. Kowalski broke the pitchfork into individual tines. 4 total. He sharpened each tip using a whetstone from the barn. 15 minutes per tine. The steel was old but good quality, held an edge well. When he finished, each tip could punch through half-inch pine board. He needed fletching, stabilized the bolt in flight, found torn canvas from a tent, cut it into triangular sections, wrapped wire around the base of each tine to create attachment points for the canvas. Crude but functional. Each completed bolt, 18 inches long, 4 ounces, sharp enough to penetrate German winter uniforms at 50 feet. He made 12 bolts total, used all 4 pitchfork tines plus metal stakes from tent rigging. Took him until 0400 hours. Dawn was 2 hours away. He hadn't slept. Didn't matter. First test at 0430, behind the barn. Target, wooden door propped against stone wall. Distance 30 feet. Kowalski loaded the first bolt, drew the bowstring. 150 pounds felt heavier than he expected. His shoulders burned. He aimed. Released. The bolt punched through the door, buried 6 inches deep in the stone wall behind it. The door was 1-inch oak. The bolt went through it like paper. Penetration power exceeded his calculations. Good. Second test, angled shot. Kowalski wanted to see if the bolt could shoot around corners. Set up the door at 90 degrees to his position, aimed 15 degrees right of the corner. Released. The bolt curved slightly in flight, hit the target board 5 feet past the corner. The weapon worked. At 0900 hours, Kowalski showed the bolt thrower to Sergeant Morrison. Morrison was drinking coffee outside the barn. Looked up, saw Kowalski carrying the modified crossbow. "What the hell is that?" Kowalski explained. "Bolt thrower for trench fighting. Shoots around corners. Silent, reusable ammunition. Could kill Germans before they knew Americans were in the trench." Morrison called. Lieutenant James Whitaker, platoon leader, 30 years old. West Point graduate, by-the-book officer. Whitaker examined the weapon, pulled the bowstring, felt the resistance, looked at the wire-wrapped bow limbs, looked at the pitchfork tine bolts. "This isn't regulation equipment?" Kowalski: "No, sir. This hasn't been tested by Army engineers." "I tested it, sir. Works fine." "You tested it?" "Yes, sir. Behind the barn, 30 feet, punch through oak door and stone wall." Whitaker looked at Morrison. Morrison shrugged. Whitaker: "This violates at least 3 equipment protocols. Modified weapon, non-standard ammunition, no safety certification." Kowalski: "Sir, it works." "Doesn't matter if it works, Private. Matters if it's authorized." Silence. Wind blew through the barn area. Somewhere distant, artillery thumped. Kowalski spoke again. Unusual for a private to push back against an officer, but he'd watched 7 men die in 3 weeks. "Sir, we lost 6 men yesterday clearing 1 trench. Same method we always use. Grenades don't work around corners. Rifles don't work against enemies you can't see. Maybe it's time to try something different." Whitaker's face hardened. "The method is doctrine, Private. We follow doctrine." "Doctrine is killing us, sir." Longer silence. Whitaker stared at Kowalski. Morrison watched both of them. The moment stretched. Morrison intervened. "Lieutenant, what if we test it? 1 trench. Real combat. If it works, we consider it. If it fails, Kowalski goes back to the bar and we write him up for equipment modification." Whitaker considered. Company B was scheduled to assault a trench system at Orscholz in 3 days. Intelligence estimated 40 German defenders. Standard assault would cost 8 to 12 casualties. Minimum. Whitaker made his decision. 1 test. You go in first, alone, 20 minutes. You clear the first section, we follow your path. You fail, you face disciplinary action for unauthorized equipment modification. Understood?" Kowalski: "Understood, sir." Whitaker walked away. Morrison stayed. You know this is crazy, right? Kowalski. Yes, Sergeant. You know you might die in that trench? Yes, Sergeant. Morrison nodded. Go practice. Kowalski practiced for 2 days, January 15th and 16th. Behind the barn, away from officers. He set up trench simulations using wooden crates and stone walls. Practiced rapid loading. Got his time down to 8 seconds per bolt. Practiced angled shots around 90-degree corners. Practiced estimating range without line of sight. Other soldiers watched, some curious, most skeptical. Private Eddie Walsh. You're gonna get killed with that thing. Kowalski. Maybe. But I won't die waiting for a grenade to work. He thought about the 7 men he'd watched die. Jimmy Reese, Daniel Martinez, Robert Chen, Thomas Bailey, Michael O'Connor, William Morrison, James Anderson. 7 men in 17 days. All died the same way, shot in blind corners they couldn't defend. All followed doctrine. Doctrine killed them. January 16th, 2000 hours, Company B briefing. Lieutenant Whitaker laid out the assault plan for Orscholz. 200-yard trench system. Intelligence estimated 40 German defenders. Zigzag pattern, blind corners every 15 feet. Standard assault. 18 men, 3 squads. Expected time, 45 minutes. Expected casualties, 8 to 12 men. Then Whitaker added, Private Kowalski will test his improvised weapon. He goes in first, alone. 20 minutes. If he clears the first 50 yards, we follow his path. If he fails, we assault using standard doctrine. The room went silent. 23 men staring at Kowalski. Corporal Eddie Walsh. You're sending him in solo? That's suicide. Whitaker. It's his idea. It's his test. Kowalski said nothing. He'd run the assault in his mind 100 times. Knew the geometry, knew the timing, knew the risks. Tomorrow he'd find out if farm engineering could beat German tactics. That night, Kowalski couldn't sleep. Sat in his foxhole, staring at the bolt thrower in darkness. Tested the draw weight one more time. 150 pounds. His arms could handle maybe 20 shots before fatigue set in. He had 12 bolts. Enough for 12 kills if every shot connected perfectly. Intelligence said 40 Germans in the trench. The math didn't work, unless he used psychology. Kowalski realized something. The bolts weren't the real weapon. Fear was the weapon. If he killed the first German silently, the others wouldn't know what happened. If he killed the second German from an unexpected angle, they'd start to panic. If he kept killing from positions they couldn't predict, they'd break. The bolt thrower was just a tool. The real innovation was psychological warfare in confined space. He wrote a letter to his father. Didn't mention the test, didn't mention the trench. Wrote about Nebraska, wrote about the farm. Dad, you taught me that most problems are simple. People just overthink them. Find what's broke. Fix it. Move on. That's what I'm trying to do here. Sealed the letter. Put it in his jacket pocket. If he died tomorrow, someone would mail it. January 17th, 0500 hours. Kowalski woke. Dawn was 2 hours away. Assault scheduled for 0830. He had 3 hours to prepare. Checked bolt thrower, functional. Checked bolts, 12 total, all sharp. Checked sidearm. M1911 pistol, 7 rounds in magazine, 1 in chamber. Backup weapon if the bolt thrower failed. 8 cold rations, beans, bread, coffee. Tasted like cardboard. Didn't matter. Food was fuel. 0700 hours. Sergeant Morrison found him. Inspected the bolt thrower personally. Pulled the bowstring back. Felt the resistance. That's heavy draw weight. Kowalski. Has to be. Bolts are 4 ounces each. Morrison released the string slowly, looked at Kowalski. You know this is crazy, right? Yes, Sergeant. Why are you doing this? Kowalski looked at Morrison. Because 7 men died doing it the other way. Maybe it's time to try something different. Morrison nodded. Go get him, farm boy. 0847 hours. Kowalski stood at the trench entrance, Lieutenant Whitaker beside him. 20 minutes, Kowalski. That's all you get. Kowalski nodded. Checked bolt thrower one last time, 1 bolt loaded, 11 in canvas bag on his belt. Morrison handed him a watch. When the hand hits 0907, we're coming in, ready or not. Kowalski took the watch. Understood, Sergeant. He stepped into the trench, descended the ladder. Boots hit frozen mud. The world changed. Surface noise faded. Trench walls closed in, only sound. His breathing, distant wind. Bolt thrower raised, finger near trigger. Advanced toward the first blind corner. 20 minutes to prove that a farm kid from Nebraska could change how American infantry fought. The test had begun. 0847 hours. Kowalski advanced through the trench. 10 feet to the first corner. He stopped. Listened. Heard nothing except wind over the trench lip, standard doctrine. Throw grenade around corner. Wait 3 seconds. Charge through smoke. Hope the enemy was dead. Kowalski's method? Different. He looked down. Puddle of frozen water at his feet. Ice surface like a mirror. Angled it with his boot. Could see around the corner using the reflection. 1 German soldier. 20 feet past the traverse. MP-40 submachine gun, facing the wrong direction. Kowalski stepped to the corner edge, raised the bolt thrower, drew the bowstring. 150 pounds of tension. His arms shook slightly. He aimed 15 degrees right of the corner, calculated the angle, released. The bolt flew, curved trajectory around the blind corner, 18 inches of sharpened steel. The German soldier never saw it coming. The bolt punched through his chest. He dropped without a sound, dead before his brain registered the impact. Time elapsed. 3 minutes. 1 kill. 0 shots fired. Kowalski advanced to the dead German's position, retrieved the bolt, bloody but functional, reusable. He wiped it on the dead man's uniform, listened, heard voices ahead, German conversation, casual tone. They didn't know their comrade was dead. Second traverse, 15 feet ahead. Kowalski used the ice puddle method again. 2 Germans this time, both facing away, loading ammunition into an MG-42 machine gun position. If they completed that setup, they could kill 20 Americans in 30 seconds. Kowalski loaded the bolt, drew, aimed at the nearest German's neck, released. The bolt hit. The German fell sideways. No sound except his body hitting mud. 8 seconds. Kowalski loaded the second bolt. The other German turned, saw his comrade fall, started to raise his rifle. Kowalski released. Second bolt through the chest, both dead in 11 seconds total. Time elapsed. 7 minutes. 3 kills. 0 shots fired. Germans deeper in the trench still didn't know Americans were inside. Third traverse. Kowalski heard running boots, German voices shouting. They'd found the bodies. The tone changed. Panic. Confusion. They didn't understand the wounds. No gunshots, no grenade blasts. Just dead soldiers with 18-inch holes through their bodies. The fear was beginning. Kowalski advanced. Fourth corner approach. He heard heavy breathing, someone waiting. A German soldier positioned at the corner, rifle aimed at ground level, ready for American assault. But Kowalski didn't come around the corner at ground level. He climbed, used the trench wall, got 8 feet high, looked down, saw the German below him, fired from above. The bolt took the German through the shoulder. Non-fatal. The German screamed. Kowalski dropped into the trench, drew his M1911 pistol. One shot. Silence again. Time elapsed. 11 minutes, 4 kills, 1 shot fired. Fifth traverse. Kowalski heard a German officer shouting orders, trying to organize defense, trying to understand the threat. But organization required understanding, and the Germans didn't understand. How many Americans were in the trench? Where were they attacking from? Why couldn't they hear gunfire? The questions broke their discipline. Kowalski kept advancing. Sixth traverse. He heard boots shuffling, multiple positions, at least 4 soldiers, all defensive, all watching the corner he was supposed to come around. Standard tactic would get him killed. 4 rifles aimed at one point. He'd be dead before he cleared the corner. Kowalski climbed again, up the trench wall, emerged 6 feet from the corner. Different angle. The Germans were watching ground level, not above. First bolt, German on the left fell. Second bolt 8 seconds later. German on the right fell. The other 2 panicked, abandoned their positions, ran deeper into the trench. Kowalski let them run, let them spread the fear to the others. Psychological warfare was working better than bullets. Time elapsed. 14 minutes. 6 kills. 34 Germans remaining if intelligence was accurate. Kowalski advanced through the section the Germans had abandoned. Found their MG-42 position. Disabled it. Took 3 German grenades from a supply crate. Backup weapons. Continued forward. 7th traverse. He heard different voices now. Not tactical. Afraid. Someone shouting Gespenst, ghost. They thought they were fighting something supernatural. Silent kills from impossible angles. Bodies with wounds that made no sense. The psychological break was happening. 8th traverse. Kowalski heard movement ahead. Multiple soldiers. But not advancing. Retreating. They were pulling back, consolidating, trying to establish a defensive line in the deeper sections of the trench. He had them running. 40 Germans running from 1 American with a crossbow. Time elapsed. 16 minutes, 4 minutes remaining. Kowalski advanced faster now. 9th traverse. Empty. 10th traverse. Empty. The Germans had abandoned the forward positions completely. He reached a junction. The trench split 3 directions, left, right, straight. He heard voices from all 3 directions. Coordinated. The Germans were setting up an ambush. They'd let him advance into the junction, then hit him from 3 sides simultaneously. Standard response. Retreat. Call for backup. Don't walk into an ambush. Kowalski did something different. He took the 3 German grenades he'd captured, pulled the pins, threw one down each trench branch. 3 seconds. 3 explosions. Simultaneous. The blasts echoed through the confined space, screaming from all 3 directions. The Germans thought they were being hit by artillery, thought more Americans had entered the trench, thought they were surrounded. The psychological warfare was complete. Kowalski heard a voice, German, shouting in broken English. "American! American, stop!" He waited. Bolt thrower raised. Ready. The voice again. Closer. "We surrender. No more fight." A German officer appeared around the left corner, hands raised. No weapon. Face pale. Probably 30 years old. Wehrmacht uniform, iron cross on his chest. Experienced soldier. Beaten by fear more than firepower. The officer called out, "We come out. No shoot." Kowalski didn't respond immediately. Let the Germans stand there, hands raised, waiting. Let the fear build for 10 more seconds. Then, "Weapons down, hands up, move slow." The Germans emerged. First 1, then 2, then 5, then 10. 34 total. All hands raised, all faces showing the same expression. Confusion, fear, defeat. They'd lost 6 men, never fired more than a few scattered shots. Couldn't understand what killed their comrades. Couldn't understand how one American had broken their entire defensive position. Kowalski stood alone, bolt thrower raised. Watched them climb out of the trench one by one. Sergeant Morrison appeared at the trench entrance, looked at the surrendering Germans, looked at Kowalski, checked his watch. 0905 hours, 18 minutes, 2 minutes ahead of schedule. Morrison: "What the hell happened down there?" Kowalski: "They couldn't see me coming. Changed everything." Lieutenant Whitaker entered the trench 30 seconds later. Brought a medical team, found 6 dead Germans, all killed by identical wounds. 18-inch penetration, massive trauma. No gunshot wounds, no grenade damage, just bolt wounds. Whitaker examined one of the bodies, saw the hole through the chest, saw the width, saw the depth. Looked at Kowalski's bolt thrower. "This did all this?" Kowalski: "Yes, sir." Whitaker walked the length of the cleared trench, 200 yards, checked every traverse, found abandoned weapons, found abandoned ammunition, found positions the Germans had prepared but never used. The defenses were solid. Should have held against standard assault for an hour minimum. Cost should have been 12 American casualties. Actual cost, 0 American casualties. 18 minutes. 1 soldier, 1 improvised weapon. The math didn't make sense until you understood the psychology. Company B gathered at the trench entrance. 23 men staring at 34 captured Germans. Staring at Kowalski. 1 man cleared 200 yards. 0 friendly casualties. 6 enemy killed. 34 enemy captured. Private Eddie Walsh broke the silence. "How?" Kowalski held up the bolt thrower. "They couldn't hear it. Couldn't see it coming. Killed them before they knew I was there." The others broke. Captain Raymond Burke arrived. Company commander. 42 years old. Combat veteran from North Africa and Sicily. He examined the bolt thrower personally, pulled the bowstring, felt the resistance, looked at the wire-wrapped bow limbs, looked at the pitchfork tine bolts. "This isn't standard issue." Kowalski: "No, sir, I built it." "From what?" "German crossbow and a pitchfork, sir." Burke looked at Morrison. Morrison shrugged. "Farm kid, sir. He builds things." Burke turned back to Kowalski. "Can you build more?" "Yes, sir." "How many?" "As many as you need, sir. Takes about 6 hours per unit if I have materials." Burke made a decision. Fast. Based on results, not regulations. "Build 10. We're assaulting 3 more trench systems next week. I want your weapon in every squad." Kowalski: "Yes, sir." Burke walked away, stopped, turned back. "Good work, Private. You just saved a lot of lives." That evening, Kowalski sat in the barn, cleaned the bolt thrower, checked the bowstring tension, sharpened the bolts. His hands were steady, no shakes, no stress reaction. He'd killed 6 men in 18 minutes. Should have felt something. Guilt, fear, something. Felt nothing except satisfaction that the weapon worked. That the geometry problem was solved. That maybe other Americans wouldn't die in blind corners. Morrison found him at 2000 hours. "You all right?" Kowalski: "Yes, Sergeant. You just cleared a trench solo. That's not normal." The trench wasn't the problem. The method was the problem. I fixed the method. Morrison sat down. "You understand what happens now, right? They're going to want you to build more. Going to want you to teach others. This isn't going to stay quiet. Kowalski understood. Innovation spread fast when it saved lives. By tomorrow, every squad leader in Company B would want a bolt thrower. By next week, every company in the regiment. By next month, maybe the whole division. A farm kid from Nebraska had just changed how American infantry fought. With a pitchfork and a crossbow. The test was over. The real work was about to begin. January 18th, 1945. Kowalski set up production in the barn behind Company B's position. Materials: German crossbows from captured equipment, farm tools from abandoned French villages, steel wire from communication lines, scrap metal from destroyed vehicles. He recruited 3 soldiers with mechanical skills. Private Eddie Walsh volunteered first, mechanic from Detroit. Good hands. Understood leverage and tension. Corporal James Chen volunteered second. Engineer before the war. Understood stress calculations. Private first class. Robert Morrison volunteered third, Sergeant Morrison's cousin. Carpenter. Understood wood and metal work. Production method was systematic. Each bolt thrower took 6 hours to build. Crossbow modification, 2 hours. Reinforce bow limbs with wire. Increase structural integrity. Bowstring replacement, 1 hour. Install parachute cord. Double the tension. Stock adjustment, 1 hour. Modify grip for rapid loading. Bolt creation, 2 hours. Sharpen metal tines. Add fletching. Balance weight distribution. Each unit came with 12 bolts. Pitchfork tines, tent stakes, metal rods, anything 18 inches long and sharp. Total output: 10 bolt throwers in 7 days. Each tested before delivery. Each capable of 150 pounds draw weight. Each capable of punching through oak at 30 feet. Kowalski trained 10 soldiers, 1 per weapon. Selection criteria: farm background preferred. Strong arms required. Steady hands essential. Training duration: 2 days per soldier. Skills taught: loading procedure. Target time: 8 seconds. Angled shooting around corners. Calculate trajectory by geometry. Bolt trajectory calculation. Account for weight and curve. Psychological intimidation tactics. Make them fear what they can't see. Silent movement in trenches. Boots on frozen mud make noise. Move slow. The second test came January 26, 1945. Trench system near Sarlautern. 3 separate sections. Each section assigned 1 squad with bolt thrower. First squad, 80-yard trench. Cleared in 12 minutes. 18 Germans captured. 2 killed. 0 American casualties. Squad leaders report. Germans surrendered after the 4th silent kill. Said they were fighting ghosts. Second squad, 95-yard trench, cleared in 15 minutes. 22 Germans captured, 4 killed. 0 American casualties. Squad leaders report. Bolt thrower went first. We followed. Germans were already running by the time we entered. Third squad, 70-yard trench, cleared in 9 minutes. 14 Germans captured, 3 killed. 0 American casualties. Squad leaders report. Fastest trench clear I've seen. Enemy had no answer for silent weapons from unexpected angles. Total results: 245 yards cleared, 54 Germans captured, 9 killed. 0 American casualties. Time: 36 minutes for 3 separate trenches. Standard doctrine projections for same trenches: 14 to 18 American casualties. Time: 60 to 90 minutes. The numbers didn't lie. Bolt throwers worked. January 28th. Captain Burke submitted a report to 3rd Army Headquarters. Report included casualty comparisons, time metrics, captured German testimonials. One German sergeant said through an interpreter, "We could not fight what we could not hear, though. Silent weapon killed us from positions we did not expect. Our training was useless." Response from Colonel Herbert James, Operations Officer. Improvised weapons are not authorized for general deployment. Effectiveness is irrelevant if safety cannot be guaranteed through proper testing protocols. Burke pushed back. Submitted second report. Sir, we've cleared 5 trench systems with 0 friendly casualties. Standard doctrine projects 35 to 40 casualties for the same operations. Request authorization for continued use and expanded production. James's response: the weapon hasn't been tested by Army engineers. It hasn't been approved by procurement. It represents a liability if it fails and causes friendly casualties. Denied. But Major General Walton Walker, Sector Corps Commander, heard about the bolt throwers through different channels. Combat reports, casualty statistics, word from field commanders. He visited Company B personally on February 2, 1945. Requested demonstration. Kowalski performed, set up targets around blind corners, hit 5 consecutive targets from angles that seemed impossible, loaded in 8 seconds between shots, punched bolts through wooden barriers at 30 feet. Walker's response was immediate. I don't care if it's made from broomsticks and chicken wire. If it saves American lives, we use it. Issued Corps-level authorization. All infantry regiments could produce and deploy bolt throwers. Overrode Colonel James's objections. The regulation matters less than the result. Authorization granted. The spread was rapid. February 1945, 47 bolt throwers deployed across Sachs Corps. March 1945, 89 bolt throwers across 3rd Army. April 1945, 124 bolt throwers across multiple armies. Production decentralized. Each regiment built their own. Variations developed. Some used spear tips instead of pitchfork tines. Some increased draw weight to 180 pounds. Some added leather grips for comfort. Some modified stocks for left-handed shooters. Core design remained Kowalski's. Reinforced crossbow, heavy bolts, silent operation. Psychological warfare through unexpected kills. German response came through captured documents. February 1945. Wehrmacht Tactical Bulletin from 7th Army Headquarters. American forces employing silent projectile weapons in trench warfare. Weapons appear to be modified crossbows. Projectiles are metal, approximately 18 inches in length. Wounds are catastrophic. Recommend immediate abandonment of blind corner defensive positions. Some German units stopped using zigzagged trenches, switched to straight trenches with longer sight lines. But that made them vulnerable to grenades and rifle fire. The bolt thrower had broken their trench tactics completely. No good counter existed. Japanese intelligence also noted the weapons. Radio intercepts from March mentioned American ghost weapons. One intercepted message: enemy uses silent killing devices in confined combat. Our men fear these weapons more than artillery. The casualty statistics told the complete story. January 1945, before bolt thrower deployment. 3rd Army trench assault casualties averaged 43% per operation. 287 total casualties in trench operations. February through April 1945, after bolt thrower deployment, casualty rate dropped to 11% per operation. February, 94 casualties. March, 71 casualties. April, 53 casualties. Total reduction, 218 fewer casualties over 3 months. Conservative estimate of lives saved, 380 to 420 soldiers who went home instead of dying in trenches. Operational efficiency improved dramatically. Time to clear 100-yard trench section dropped from 22 minutes to 9 minutes. Ammunition expenditure dropped from 840 rounds and 12 grenades to 6 bolts and minimal rifle ammunition. Cost analysis. Bolts cost 0. Made from scavenged materials. saved thousands of dollars in ammunition, saved thousands of hours in combat time, saved hundreds of lives. German prisoner interrogations revealed psychological impact. One German lieutenant, captured March 15th. We could not defend against a weapon we could not hear or see. The Americans killed us from positions that should have been safe. Our men began to fear the trenches more than open combat. Kowalski was removed from combat operations March 1st, 1945. Reassigned to training command. Orders from division headquarters, too valuable as instructor. More important teaching the tactics than using them personally. He hated it. Wanted to stay with Company B. Wanted to stay in the fight. But command made the decision. You're more valuable training 300 soldiers than being one soldier. Kowalski trained pilots for 2 months, taught bolt thrower construction, taught tactical employment, taught psychological warfare principles, trained 340 soldiers total before war's end. Recognition came slowly. Bronze Star, March 1945. Citation: for meritorious service in development of innovative combat tactics resulting in significant reduction of friendly casualties. Silver Star, April 1945. Citation: for gallantry in action during single-handed trench clearance operation resulting in capture of 34 enemy soldiers. No Medal of Honor. Senior officers felt improvised weapon use shouldn't be celebrated at highest level. Set wrong precedent. Kowalski didn't care about medals, cared about casualty statistics, cared that fewer men were dying in trenches. War ended May 8, 1945. Kowalski returned to Nebraska in August, returned to the family farm, never talked about the bolt thrower, never talked about the trenches. When people asked about the war, I fixed some problems, that's all. Married 1947, Sarah Mitchell, nurse from Omaha, had 4 children, ran the family farm for 43 years, wheat, corn, cattle, fixed tractors, built irrigation systems, lived the life he would have lived if the war never happened. Died 1994, 68 years old, heart attack while repairing a tractor engine. Same kind of work he was doing at 14, farm kid who never stopped fixing what was broken. The bolt thrower never became official Army equipment. After war ended, improvised weapons were decommissioned. All bolt throwers destroyed or discarded. No examples survive in military museums. Official Army history barely mentions them. One paragraph in 3rd Army Operations Summary. Improvised projectile weapons proved effective in trench clearance operations February through April 1945. But veterans never forgot. Every 3rd Army reunion included bolt thrower stories. Private Eddie Walsh, 1987. Interview: Lenny Kowalski saved my life 3 times with that Pitchfork crossbow. Saved a lot of us. Army should have given him the Medal of Honor. But they were embarrassed that a farm kid with scrap metal solved a problem their engineers couldn't. Sergeant Frank Morrison, 1992 interview, 6 months before Kowalski died. Best soldier I ever served with. Didn't wait for permission to save lives, just did it. That's the kind of man you want in a war. The kind who sees a problem and fixes it instead of complaining about it. Leonard Kowalski saved 400 lives with a pitchfork and a crossbow. Changed how American infantry cleared trenches, broke German defensive tactics. Did it all because he couldn't watch more men die following doctrine that didn't work. His grave is in Omaha. Simple headstone. Name, dates, loving husband and father. No mention of the war. No mention of the Silver Star. No mention that he changed combat tactics with farm tools and ingenuity. But every year, on January 17th, a few old men visit that grave. Men in their 80s and 90s. Men who cleared trenches with bolt throwers in 1945. Men who lived because a farm kid from Nebraska knew how to fix what was broken. They stand there for a few minutes. Don't say much. Just remember. Then they leave. And Leonard Kowalski stays forgotten by history, remembered only by the men whose lives he saved. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through official channels, not through engineering committees, through soldiers who see problems and build solutions. Through farm kids who understand that the best weapon isn't always the most sophisticated. Sometimes it's just the one that works. If this story moved you, hit that like button right now. Every like tells YouTube to share this with more people who need to hear about soldiers like Lenny Kowalski. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're rescuing these forgotten stories from dusty archives every single week. Stories about farm kids who became engineers, mechanics who became heroes, ordinary people who did extraordinary things because nobody told them it was impossible. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Are you in Nebraska, where Kowalski grew up? Germany, where he fought? Somewhere else entirely? Our community spans continents. You're not just a viewer. You're part of keeping these memories alive. Tell us if someone in your family served. Tell us if you knew a soldier like Kowalski. Just let us know you're here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for making sure Leonard Kowalski doesn't disappear into silence. He saved 400 lives with a pitchfork and a crossbow. The least we can do is remember his name.